Hey guys, I'm back with another One Piece video, and this will be divided into parts to avoid making it too long. I will be discussing artistic mistakes in the One Piece manga from the East Blue Saga, the arc of Romance Dawn to the arc of Loguetown, but I will be skipping around parts within the manga as my resources are limited. Volumes 1 through volumes 12 of the One Piece manga. Pull out your One Piece books to be shocked by the mistakes that you may have missed, but because it is drawn in monochrome, all in Japan, they have some colored pages due to it being the original, but when it gets printed in North America, the color is gone. With each error or errors, I will be giving short summaries to help illustrate my point and to overall give my commentary of Ichiro Oda's mistakes. Chapter 1. After Shanks comes into conflict with a mountain bandit named Haguma, leader of the mountain bandits, at a bar, it is revealed that Luffy accidentally ate a devil fruit, the gum fruit. Later on, after Luffy provokes Haguma, he is taken hostage. Shanks and his crew show up and defeat Haguma's bandits, but Haguma escapes, taking Luffy on a boat. In this chapter, Yasopp is wearing his shoe and his sandal in this panel of page 12. For those who don't know, Yasopp is Usopp's dad. When Haguma the bandit busted down the door, in page 17, the door was fixed back up. This does not make sense. Oda's explanation is that someone named Atomo fixed it, which is a convenient way to explain something that feels very out of place in the beginning of the first chapter in the SBS, which stands for Shitsumon o Bushido Sudo. Translated as I'm taking questions, is a question and answering column section for his fans to ask. After Shanks gives his hat after saving Luffy from the bandit, in page 51, Shanks' Jolly Roger is missing a scar. Chapter 2, Luffy ends up on an island that the pirate Arin Mace Alvida is using as a base. There he meets Kobe, a boy who has been forced to be Alvida's servant despite his desires to become a marine. Luffy helps Kobe get the courage to stand up to Alvida. After this, Luffy promptly defeats her and leaves the island with Kobe. In page 69, Alvida's freckles are gone. And in page 75, they are gone again. Chapter 5. Morgan and his soldiers go to kill Zoro and Kobe, while Luffy retrieves Zoro's swords. Zoro's thinking about how he cannot die at a place like this, remembering the promise he made to his childhood friend, Kuina. Just before Zoro and Kobe are shot, Luffy gets in the way, protecting the pair from all bullets. Zoro realizes that if he wants to live, he has no choice and tells Luffy that he will join him. On page 129, Zoro's piercing is gone, which is on his left ear, but in this panel, it is completely gone. While in the other panel down here, it shows. On page 141, Luffy's sword is strapped in the wrong way. Notice here how it is positioned, and it changes in the other panel. Chapter 7, Morgan's Marines are grateful to Luffy for defeating Morgan and ridding them of his tyranny, and allow Luffy and Zoro to leave peacefully. Kobe, however, does not accompany them, causing the soldiers to ask if he is one of them or not. To prove that Kobe is not their friend, Luffy provokes him until he punches him. He is then allowed to stay. After the pirates leave, Kobe asks to join the Marines and is allowed in. Kobe and the Marines salute Luffy and Zoro as they set off. On page 180, notice how Kobe's bandage around his arm switched from the left to the right in this panel, while in other panels it is on the left side of his shoulder. Chapter 9, Nami attempts to team up with Luffy. The Buggy pirates try to find the map she stole, but when they return to Buggy empty-handed, he shoots one with his cannon. Nami takes Luffy into a house and she explains to him the situation and who Buggy is. Luffy asks her if she wants to join his crew. She refuses. Luffy explains to her why his straw hat is a treasure. Nami says that the thing she hates most are pirates. They leave the house and go to search for Buggy, but Nami tricks Luffy, ties him up with a rope, and brings him to Buggy to broker a deal. Zoro arrives at the village. On page 24, Buggy's nose turns white. Or should I really say the horrible truth? Oda forgot to add the ink to Buggy's nose. Chapter 17. As Zoro and Kabaji's fight continues, Nami leaves to steal the Buggy Pirates' treasure, while the crew is still unconscious, but asks Luffy to steal the Grand Lion from Buggy if he got the chance. Zoro then defeats Kabaji with his Onigiri attack, only to collapse as he reveals that they are pirates. Surprised by this, Buggy laughs at their desire to enter the Grand Line before Luffy declares his intent to become Pirate King. As they prepare to fight, Buggy mentions Shanks, causing Luffy to pause. On page 187, Zoro's katana is suddenly gone. In this first panel, while in the last panel down here, it magically is clenched with his mouth again. Chapter 18. With all the other pirates defeated, Buggy and Luffy prepared to fight. Luffy asks about Buggy's connection to Shanks, but Buggy mocks him. Each fighter's ability gives them an advantage over the other, and onlookers become too afraid to enter such a dangerous battle. Finally, Buggy lands a hit on Luffy's hat, enraging the young pirate. Realizing whose hat it is, Buggy begins to target it specifically, and reveals he was a comrade of Shanks. Luffy refuses to believe this, and lends a powerful strike in return. On page 8, on Buggy's left hand, he is holding only 3 knives, while in his right hand, he is holding 4. This may just be an exaggeration. It could be that Buggy's knife at his pinky is hiding underneath his coat, so I'll let Oda get a pass on this, despite this mistake. On page 9, his knives are completely gone in this panel. Buggy has a white nose again. Luffy's scar is gone, and then it reappears in these panels right here, and here. Now these are all the panels that reappears in this chapter, since I don't want to bombard my audience with too many examples. Chapter 34, Luffy awakens, but the battle is suspended by the appearance of Kaya. Captain Kudo does not want to negotiate as he believes he needs to kill Kaya to live a peaceful life, and as revenge for the boring years he had to endure. On page 154, Kudo's bandage is gone. Chapter 43, the Straw Hat Pirates arrive at the Baratie restaurant, where they come into conflict with the Ramirine Lieutenant Fullbody, which results in Luffy indirectly damaging the nearby restaurant. While inside the Baratie, Fullbody attempts to impress the state, only for the Sushao serving them to make a fool out of the man. Meanwhile, Luffy tries to negotiate with the head chief about the damage inflicted upon his restaurant by the young boy, and in an attempt to have revenge upon the waiter that embarrassed him, Fullbody fails and is left in a mangled state by said waiter. On page 149, Fullbody's Iron Fist is not here. On page 160, it is not here. On page 164, it is still not here. Chapter 44, page 180, it is still not here in this part. Now, I had to add a color page due to the English translation covering up on Fullbody's hand. Chapter 46, Sanji makes his show with the ladies. 2 days after Gin's departure, Don Krieg arrives at the restaurant, starving and begging for food. On page 29, Usopp's wristband isn't on his left hand, then it reappears 2 pages from now. Chapter 52, Rebel Noah Zoro has been utterly defeated and nearly killed by Dracule Mihawk. Luffy attacks Mihawk out of anger, but he reveals that Zoro is still alive. Johnny, Yosaku, and Usopp recover Zoro's body from the ocean and administer what first aids they can. After regaining consciousness, Zoro tearfully promises his captain that he will never lose again until he defeats Mihawk and becomes the world's greatest swordsman. After Mihawk's departure, Usopp, Zoro, Johnny, and Yosaku set off to retrieve Nami. Luffy, on the other hand, stays back and decides to help the chiefs of the Baratie against the Don Krieg. Luffy, in the middle of the battle, has 2 straw hats. In the middle of the battle, 2 straw hats. But this was only in page 151 of chapter 52. Chapter 60, the ferocious battle between Sanji and Gin, and Luffy and Don Krieg begins. On page 136, within the battle, there is a person in the background who has 6 fingers instead of 5. Chapter 63. Luffy runs after Don Krieg as he is upset for the way he has treated Gin. Meanwhile, Patty and Carne give Gin extracted antidote from a gas mask as he is suffering from Krieg's poison bomb. Don Krieg is amused by Luffy's move and fires several spikes at him from his weapon. Luffy does not waver and accepts the pain in order to get closer to the enemy. Finally, Luffy reaches Don Krieg after sustaining several stab wounds and readies an attack. Krieg protects himself behind a cape made of spikes at the last second. Despite this protection, Luffy lands a confident punch to Krieg's jaw through the spiked cape. Using his gum bullet technique, sending him to the ground. Luffy then proclaims he will not die here. On page 12, Luffy is on the left side, but notice how here he was on the right side before page 12. On page 8, Sanji is on the left, and Luffy is on the right. On page 11, Luffy is on the right, and Sanji is on the left. But only when he gets to page 12, Luffy is on the left, and Sanji is on the right. Now, it could just be that they just switched sides unthinkingly, since when you're tired and beaten up, it is very difficult to think strategically. But this is likely Oda's mistake that he made nonetheless. Despite the minutia, it really should look like this, and not like this. Chapter 68. Sanji joins the Straw Hats, becoming the 4th member. On page 118, Sanji's tuft of beard is gone. Chapter 69. Yosaku explains to Luffy and Sanji about the 7 warlords of the sea. Meanwhile, Mizumi, a corrupt marine officer, pays a visit to Arlong in his pirate pier. On page 141, Arlong has normal human teeth. Chapter 72. Arlong tries to kill Genzo in order to remind the people of Kokoyasu village that it is useless to resist the will of the Arlong pirates. Usopp comes in and uses his exploding star technique. Genzo is saved thanks to Usopp. On page 20, Arlong has 5 points on his nose instead of 4. Chapter 79. After being kidnapped, Nami became a member of Arlong's crew. On page 157, Genzo's mustache is left unshaded, and then it becomes shaded on page 158. Chapter 85. Despite his heavy injuries, Zoro continues to fight Hachin and defeats him despite the fisherman having 6 swords to his 3. Zoro finishes him off using his Dragon's Twister sword technique. Sanji then confronts Kurobe while Ginzo and Nojiko go underwater to try to save the drowning Luffy. On page 72, the katana is gone from Zoro's mouth, and on this panel, the katana reappears back into Zoro's mouth on page 72. But there's this odd moment. Zoro is actually holding Hachin's sword. You can tell if you zoom in close enough right here. Now, it may not look obvious, but if you know the parts of a sword, you can tell. So here's a graph at the cross sword, which is a bar of metal at right angles to the blade placed between the blade and the hilt. You notice he has Hachin's sword. Chapter 89. Sanji goes underwater to free Luffy, but Arlong overwhelms Zoro and revive the Hachin chases after Sanji. However, Hachin's wounds reopen, and Sanji successfully frees Luffy. Luffy then begins his attack on Arlong. On page 166, while Luffy uses his Gum Gum Gatling, notice how Arlong's pants resembles that of Luffy's. And on this panel, Arlong has 5 points on his nose again. Chapter 93. Luffy works to destroy the room where Arlong forced Nami to take maps, and he manages to break the fishman's nose. He then sends Arlong crashing all the way through the Arlong's Park Tower, demolishing it. On page 57, Arlong's nose is broken in 2 different directions. Notice how here in this panel, Luffy bent it to the left, and then on the last panel, it is pointed towards the left. But if his nose was bent to the left, on this panel, it should be pointing towards the right, not the left when he fell down. Chapter 95. The Straw Hats continue partying with the Kokoyasu village residents to celebrate their freedom. Nami decides to replace her Arlong Pirates tattoos with a new one consisting of an orange and a pinwheel. Ginzo, who had started wearing the pinwheel to make her smile as a baby, makes Luffy promise to never take away Nami's smile. The next day, the Straw Hats part ways with the villagers. Johnny and Yosaku and Nami decides to leave all her stolen money with the villagers. Before she leaves Harvard, she does pickpocket them as she runs onto the ship and happily bids everyone farewell as she and the crew sail away. On page 97, Ginzo's scars are healed, while on page 96, he had the scars. On page 95, Luffy's bandage is on his right arm, while on page 101, it is on his left arm. Chapter 100. Smoker manages to capture Buggy, Alvida, and the rest in mere seconds, using his net made of sea stone for devil fruit users. When he finally gets a hold on Luffy and is ready to finish him off, a mysterious man named Dragon stops Smoker, and a huge storm suddenly starts. The storm helps Luffy. Zoro and Sanji escape to the ship and head to the Grand Line where they vow to accomplish their dreams. On page 21, Luffy's scar is gone. Chapter 102. On their way down from Reverse Mountain, The crew is eaten by a giant whale. On page 53, in the cover page, Morgan's axe is on his left arm, even though we know Morgan's axe is supposed to be on his right arm. Alright guys, thank you for making it this far. You guys have a wonderful day.